This is a Shir on Likutei Sichos Chelek Yutes, the Sicha of Tavo Chai Elul. Chai Elul, the Yom Holedes from Shnei Ameris Hagdelim. Chai Elul is the birthday of the two great luminaries, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Teres Chasidus HaKlolis, the general Torah of Chassidus, and the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Teres Chasidus Chabad, of Hasidic Chabad Hasidism. So this date of the 18th of Elul, known as Chai Elul, Chai Yudches, 18, always falls close to the Parshas, to Shabbos Parshas Ki Tovei, or on Shabbos Tovei itself. Since all of the Moyadei, Hashana, all of the appointed times in the year, Moyadei we refer to Yomim Tovim, to Chagim, to holidays as Moyadei. Says the Rebbe, where does the word Moyadei come? It comes from appointment, from the same lashon of meyuad, an appointed time. In other words, it's a time with a special designation, with a special content. So we know that all of the moyadim, the festivals, the appointed times of the year, the chagim of the year, are hinted at in the parshas of the Torah in which they fall. In other words, the parsha of the week, although it's a different cycle, but it has connection to the cycle of the moyadim that fall within that parsha. As the Rebbe often quotes, you can see here in Ha'orah 5, the Rebbe always quotes this from the Shalom. So we have to say that in Parshas Tovai, there is alluded also the content of the day of Chai Elul. Especially that the day of Chai Elul is called a Yom Tov and a Moyed, as is well known. And here the Rebbe is quoting what the Frierdiker Rebbe says in Sefer HaSichos, that the Rebbe Rashab told him on Chai Elul, a gut Yom Tov. Base. The name of our Sedra, which of course, as we know, the name contains and denotes the content of the entire Sedra. It's not just happens to be the first words, the opening words of the Sedra. But that also means that it contains the entire content and message of the Parsha, is the words Tovei, or Ki Tovei. The Rebbe puts here in brackets Ki, and the Rebbe writes in there are various words in ways to be called it. The Rambam elsewhere calls it V'hoya Ki Tovei. We actually commonly refer to it as Parshas Ki Tovei, Ki Sovei. But Parshas Tovei, the Taich of Tovei, and the Rebbe is saying that that's the way it's called in the Tur. It's called Tovei. So Parshas Tovei, what is the translation of the word Tovei? Tovei L'Oretz, come to the land. It's about the mitzvah Bikurim. It says when you come to the land, you should start to bring the first fruits to the Beis HaMikdash as Bikurim, to the Kohen. So what does it mean when you come to the land? It refers to La'acha Yerusha V'Yeshiva, after the inheritance and settling of the land. So there's a process of driving out the enemy and settling in the land and inheriting the land, and then they're settling the land. So not just does our Parsha specify that when you come to the land, and then the parsha itself continues in our parsha, the pasuk continues, and you inherit and settle therein. But as Chazal tell us that wherever it says the words Ki Tovei or something similar to that, so then it means after, not just when they enter at the first, they put the first foot in, but after they've inherited and settled it. And since that's the meaning of Ki Tovei in every place, so we understand that even though we learn it from the fact that there's a pasuk that in Shlach that says that what does it mean to come into the land? In one of those places, I believe it's about the mitzvah of Challah, it says that it only refers to when you actually come and settle it, not when you just enter, the first stages of entering. So the fact that the Torah had to specify it in one place now tells us that that is the same thing in every other place. And the Rebbe says, but it's not just, it's telling us a halacha, that wherever it says come into the land, it means after you fully settled it. That now becomes the actual translation of the word Tovei. So now when we say the word Tovei La'aretz, it means after you've settled the land, not just entered. More than that, it says here that it has to be after Yerusha V'Yeshiva, after they inherit and settle it. It's not just about each individual doing the Bikurim when he comes into his personal property. No, it means after the 14 years that the collective of Am Yisrael conquered and divided the land and settled and inherited the land, the entire Eretz Yisrael. As the Rebbe says, we have already spoken about it, and this is in Likut Sichs Chelek Tes, that Rashi in the beginning of our parsha says on the words Kitav El Haaretz, Magid, this teaches us that they weren't obligated to bikurim till they conquered the land and divided it. It doesn't just say after inheriting and dividing like it says elsewhere. Because Rashi wants to emphasize that V'yirishta v'yashavta ba here is not about an individual coming in and inheriting, it's about the collective. After they fully conquered the entire land and divided it to all the different tribes, that took 14 years, that's when they brought bikurim. So all of that is in the words kitave, after it's been settled by the entire the community. Now, interestingly, continues Rabbi and Gimel. So the explanation here, what's the connection between Chayil and coming into the land? At the proper taich, the appropriate taich translation of the word bia, coming in, is totally coming in. As our sages have told us, bia b'miktzas leishma bia. I'm about to look up, hang on one second, I'll pull down a Gemara because I wanted to look it up before and I didn't get a chance. Chulin Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. I want to see about what topic this is being said. Sorry, bear with me. I'm scared if I close the recording, whatever, I'm not going to be able to open up to the same place or whatever. Chulin Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. So we're talking about Hichnis Yodel Beis Hamenuga. If there's a house that has been afflicted with saras. So now we say that if somebody came in to that house, if he only stuck in his hands to the house, is it called that he went into the house and he becomes Tomei? Or is it Exera? In other words, so the Gemara says everybody holds that just putting in your hands doesn't mean you came into the house and you shouldn't be Tomei. But the Chachamim said you put in your hands will become Tomei. That's Exera. There's a Tesis that quotes, but at any rate, so we're talking here, everybody is of the opinion that when it says Kitove, in other words, there's a halachic concept, we're in the Gemara, that when it says coming into something, coming in partially, bia b'miktzas, coming in partially, lishma bia, doesn't mean you came in. So it says anybody that comes into the afflicted house will become tamei, he has to fully come in. It's not enough just puts in his hands. And we know that when it comes to tvila, when it comes to immersion, so even if somebody immersed his entire body, but there's one hair that has been immersed, the person hasn't teviled. And interesting that the Rebbe writes here in the Ha'ara 19 is fascinating to me. That's what I'm going to point it out. That there's a concept that mid'iraisa, if somebody's in the mikveh, and there is, we know that, especially particularly when we talk about tefillah these days, we talk about tefillah when a woman has to tevel, so she has to be very careful that there's absolutely nothing of a chatzitza, nothing that interrupts between her and the water. However, there is a concept that mid'iraisa, sometimes even something that's a little bit interrupting will not be considered mid'iraisa chatzitza. Right? There's a concept of Roiv and Makpid, not going into the details of that. However, says the Alter Rebbe, it comes out from the Tzemach Tzedek, who learned from the Alter Rebbe that if somebody has a hair sticking out, mid'iraisa, it wasn't a good tefillah. It's a fascinating thing, because there's a difference between the water enveloping the person totally, and perhaps there's some kind of a small interruption where there's room to say about what's the Iraisa and what's the Rabbanan. But if the person has a hair sticking out, so that means there wasn't a full immersion. That's mid'iraisa. The person didn't have a tefillah. They weren't immersed. So the word tovei means fully coming in. And that's why the word tovei means after it was fully settled. Because when is a yid fully into Eretz Yisrael? It's only when he's there in a settled way. Till then, it's just haphazardly in there. More than that, because there's achdus of Yidden, so long that not all the Yidden have gone into Eretz Yisrael, so then you're still lacking the full fulfillment of Tavo, of coming in. In other words, every individual is not fully in if there's another individual who's not there yet. Even though he personally may be already in his villa, he may already have inherited the land. So that's why real coming into Yisrael, even for the individual, is only once everybody is there. Says the Rabbi here, this must be pointed out, sorry, I'm jumping into a few others here. Order 21, but the Rebbe said that if one Yid doesn't, in that other Sikha, I believe the Rebbe says, a Yid can only really be happy and give thanks when all the Yidden are in Eretz Yisrael. So I can't go and give Bikurim when all the other Yidden are not there yet. Says the Rebbe, this will explain to us also why the Yid, the whole concept of bringing Bikurim is not to be an ingrate, not to be a Kfui Toiva. So how is it that the Yid can wait 14 years? He may have gotten his Shetach right away at the beginning of the 14 years, and now he has to say thank to Hashem. Why is he delaying it? You know why he's delaying it? Because he's not yet settled. The Torah says, come in once you're settled. I'm not settled yet. Another Yid didn't settle. I don't have the simcha, I don't have the settle. So otherwise, how do you delay that whatchamacallit? So this shows, even though Hakadosh HaTev is critical, it shows how even more critical is that you have to understand that you cannot really be thankful. You cannot really be called Tova. You cannot really be B'simcha when another Yid's not settled yet. So you have to wait till the Tova means wait till it's totally finished. So now we have a connection between Tova and Elul. Because the uftu, the advantage or the achievement of Teres Chassidus, which was revealed through the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, is that the Aved of Torah Mitzvah should be in a way of Tova, of fully vested, going totally into the Aved of Torah Mitzvahs, till there shouldn't be even one point, one aspect of the person that's not thoroughly vested and saturated with Torah mitzvahs, as we're going to say. And just like it is in the Indian of Tavai, there's two concepts in coming into the land. There's the general Indian of coming into the land, and then there's the details of what does it mean coming into the land. It means that it first has to be settled and inherited and settled. Similarly with Chayel, there's two things. There's similar two things. There's the generality, the birth of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Teres Chassidus HaKlal, the general Teres Chassidus. And then number two, we have the Yemeleres and Alter Rebbe, which is a particular Derech in Chassidus Chabad, but I was going to see it's particular, but it adds a new prism to the entire Chassidus Haklalis. The difference between them is the difference, like the Friedrich said. The Baal Shem Tov hat bewiesen, wie man darf in the Mebish, and the Baal Shem Tov showed how we ought to and we need to serve Hashem, which is like Kitove, generally coming in. You got to come in. Generally, you got to serve Hashem in this way. You got to get to the product of being totally vested. The Alter Rebbe hat bewiesen, wie kann man sein ein Eved Hashem? The Rebbe showed how you can be an Eved Avaya, how you can get to becoming an Eved Hashem. In other words, how do you actualize it? How do you build this structure, this journey into Avedus Hashem, into a full being fully vested and engrossed in Avedus Hashem? How do you build it step after step? That's already like the details. The details, conquering, inheriting, settling, as will to be explained further. Dalit. So first we'll understand it by first prefacing what's known, that the revelation of Teres Chassidus is a preparation to the coming of Mashiach. As it's known that Mashiach answered the Baal Shem Tov, that then will be Asimar. When Mashiach was asked, when will you come? He answered, when your wellsprings, talking to the Baal Shem Tov, will be spread forth. So it says in books of Kabbalah, that till Bias Mashiach, we have to know all the revelations in this world come from a place called Chitzonius Atik, the outermost level, the outermost layer of Atik. The word Atik literally means removed, exalted. Atik is the higher level of Keser. Keser is the crown in the order of Ishtalshlus. There's Arich, the lower first level of Keser. The more exalted level of Keser is Atik. It's called Atik because it's like removed and exalted. It's much higher. It doesn't relate to the world. You need to have a diminution, a tzimtzum from that to get through Arich and then to get to Yishtalshlus. But even within Atik, this exalted, removed aspect of Keser, there's Chitzonius Atik, the way it is in its external layer. Mashiach will come, there's going to be a deeper revelation, there's going to be the revelation of Pnimius Atik, the inner layer of Atik. Now, since everything that we do now in preparation for Mashiach coming has to be somewhat similar to the thing we're preparing for. It's not just if you do tit, you get tat. No, but what we're doing is actually already building is so to speak, in reminiscent or already in the same pattern of what we're preparing for. So we have to say that also the inyan of in Avodas Hashem, what Chassidus did, since Chassidus is leading us and paving the way to Mashiach, that's what the Mashiach told Baal. So also in the achievement of Chassidus, there's two levels: there's Pnimius and there's Chitzenius. So what Chassidus is coming to do with through serving Torah mitzvahs is bringing Mashiach, and that's why it talks to the Pnimius of a person. It's drawing down the Pnimius of Elikus, the Pnimius, the inner layer of Atik. Hey, the difference between Pnimius and Chitzenius in general, when we talk it on a human level, what's the difference between inner layer and the outer layer? Talking about Pnimius inner layer means the way the person is to himself without taking into account relationship of outside of him. Chitzenius is the outer layer, is already the way he projects and relates to that what is outside of him. So what's the difference in Avodas Hashem? When a person just does something with his external layer, so he's not totally vested in the thing. His innermost being and his Pnimius, his inner layer, is not fully vested in the thing he's doing it. He's doing it as part of relating to something outside of him. It's a functional thing. It's not necessarily pulling his entire essence with him. And even so, it's a level in him that is able to relate to something outside of him. And that's why he and the thing remain two separate things. However, when a person does something with a pnimius, so he becomes fully vested in it. Because of his pnimius, when he does something when a person is talking about his inner core, there's nothing that can bother him, ruffle him. There's no room in that inner space for something that's outside of him. So it means that even if he's doing something individual, something specific, but if he's doing it with his true pnimius, with his etzem, with his essence, so that thing becomes unified with him like one metzias, like one entity. Rabbi says here in the Ha'ara, like we know this in Sefer Sikh, it says Klal Yodua is a well-known rule as Kol Atzmi Pnimi. Anything that's essential, that's at its core, is Pnimi, is inner. If you reach the core and the essence, then it's Pnimi, then the thing is really there. I don't know if this mashal is a good mashal, but I was maybe it will help a little bit to understand. There was a teacher. This is a mashal brought in the Ben Ish Chai actually. It's to explain something else, but I'm just using his mashal. There was a teacher teaching his class Torah, and it was a fast day, and they weren't into it. You could see they were tired. They said they didn't eat. They're tired. They're weak. And the teacher said, "You know what? You guys are right. Let's play a game, like a game, a wisdom game, some kind of a game." They started playing the game, and the kids got really into it. And the teacher jumps up and says, "Guys, you do have koyach. Open the books." What happened there? What happened there is that their learning was a little bit from chitzenius. Yes, they have an obligation to come and learn. The kids that's being sent to school, they know they have to listen to the teacher, they have to learn. But they weren't fully vested in it. Playing the game, while they were really into it. So there was already, they were fully involved, fully engrossed. So that's perhaps a little bit of an example of chitzenius and pnimius. So that's the achievement of the Gili of Teres Chassidus, says the Rebbe in Isvav. Chassidus, and in general Pnimius HaTorah, which is called the Neshama, Nishmasa Deras, and Neshama V'Raisa, reveals the essence of the Chayis, the Nekudas HaChayis of a Yid, the essence of the vitality of a Yid in all his Torah mitzvahs. That he does it with Chayis. What's the nature and the character trait of Chayis? That it becomes one with the thing that it enlivens. It's giving life to something, it becomes part and parcel of that thing. Because you see, Chayus, vitality, doesn't add a new detail to the thing it enlivens. When we're talking about a live body and a dead body, a live body has life, but it's not like there's an additional limb now that the dead body doesn't have. Actual vitality, Chayus, is not a separate thing to the thing that it's enlivening. It is the neshama of the body that it's keeping alive. It's the soul of what it's enlivening. Every aspect of the body is now a lebedik in the kudah. Has its chayas. It's not that the chayas is in the middle and the body is on the outside. The chayas is there in every particle, in every atom, in every molecule of the body. And this is what the gift and the advantage and the of Chassidus is in the inner Torah mitzvahs. Because learning Torah and doing mitzvahs could also be in a way that the Yid and the Torah mitzvahs are two separate things. He's a Yid and he has to do Torah mitzvahs. Even learning Torah, where we say that Torah is a Yichud Nifla, Tanya says, it connects you with, binds you up in a unification with Hashem like nothing else. But that's about his seichel. But it could be the Yid, so his seichel is becoming totally one with Hashem. But it could be he feels, I'm learning Torah, but I'm not in the Torah. Same thing with the mitzvah, I'm doing it, I have to do it, but he wraps it without real neshama, without real chayas. Chassidus, however, demands and shows the way how as if yeder, as like every person is able to reveal his pnimius and his chayas. And if you reveal your pnimius, you know what a yid is really involved in, not the game. A yid is really one thing with Torah mitzvahs. That's where his real vitality is. Zayin. This is also the explanation. The Rebbe writes here parenthetically, b'derech efsher perhaps, well known, that once they were doing chazorah by one of the Rabbeim, and the Rebbe had said in the Maimer, b'derech efsher, and the Chayzer repeated it to the Rebbe, and he took out the b'derech efsher, possibly we could say. And the Rebbe said, interjected and said, I said in the Maimer that this is possibly we could say, I wasn't saying it definitively. And the Chayzer said, what by the Rebbe is a possibility is by the Chassidim definitive. So, as I point out, so the Rebbe says this is also the hasbara. The Rebbe adds b'derech efsher possibly. Why Chassidus is the preparation to the Bias Mashiach. Where Bias Mashiach, coming Mashiach, there's going to be a revelation of Pnimius Atik, the inner aspect, the inner layer of Atik. Why? Because all the levels of Shtalshlos, till even Chitzenius Atik, the outer aspect of Atik, they all allow a space. They allow for something that's outside of the essence of Hashem, so to speak. And that's why they can become revealed in the world. In other words, that's why they can be part of a hishtalshus, of a chain that allows for a world. Because if you go to the level of Pnimis Atik, and that's the essence of Elikus, there's nothing outside of him. So the world can't be given a space to create a smokescreen as if it exists. So that's why when Pnimis Atik gets revealed in the world, it's in a way that what's felt is the oneness of Hashem with creation. There's nothing outside of Hashem. It's not like the world can have any independent say, so to speak. The world is never independent, but there's not even a shtalshus. There can't even be a vision, so to speak, and as if there is a reality of a world. Pnimis Atik just becomes, that's all that you feel, Pnimis Atik, and the world is just one thing with its source. There's nothing outside of it. So now in this concept where the chayos, we spoke about chayos, the vitality being the vitality of every single molecule, so to speak, of the person, there's two ways how the chayos of the neshama is, how the vitality, the life, literally the life of a body is spread forth in a person. The first level is aleph, the chayos kloli, the general spirit of life. So there's just a body that's alive. All the limbs are alive in the same way. There's no difference between one limb and the other. There's a moment where the person is alive, and his toenail and his brain, person is alive, and chas v'shalom, when the neshama departs, the person is no longer alive. That's chayis kloli, general chayis. Then there's the chayis prati, the individual chayis, which is measured in every limb according to its qualities. And when we look in the details of how each aspect of the body has its vitality, so about that, the heel is referred to in Chazal as the malach hamavish ba'adam, the dead part of the person, because in the heel there's far less visible vitality. That's why you can put the heel in a hot place. It can withstand a lot more. It's a lot less sensitive. That's, so to speak, the most deadened part of the human body. And the brain is the most alive part. It's pulsing with energy, and it's super sensitive and so on. So we can say that the difference between the chayas of Chassidus, remember we said that Chassidus brings a chayas that a yid feels his oneness with Hashem and Torah mitzvahs. Chayas that's brought down through the Baal Shem Tov is the general chayas, and the chayas brought down by the Alter Rebbe is the individual chayas. It corresponds to the two kinds of chayases that we talked about. The Baal Shem Tov revealed a general chayas in Torah mitzvahs, which in general that expresses itself in the concept of emunah, faith, belief. Even though the koyach of emunah totally permeates and is vested within all the koyches hanefesh, all the powers of the soul, all the qualities. In other words, all everything. And it affects the entire body with all its details in a way of chayas. As it says, tzaddik v'manasa yichya, tzaddik lives with his emunah, it enlivens, gives life to the entire body. But it doesn't mean, it's not saying that each part of the body is getting a detailed chayas. It's a general chayas that's got to do with the nekuda of faith that the neshama has. And the Jew is alive. Tired of Yid, because Yid has a neshama, and that's just his real essence. The Alter Rebbe, just like the chayes haklali of the general chayes of a person, it becomes the life. It is the life of all of the limbs, but it's not relating individually to the respective limbs. It's giving a general vitality. Here's a live person. Here's, as opposed to somebody who's not alive. The whole body is alive. All the limbs being part of all the aspects that comprise the body of a person. Alter Rebbe was our mamshech achayis in every individual koyach of the neshama, and in every individual aved of Torah mitzvahs, and also and as it relates to the unique flavor and content of each koyach. Just like the individual chayis, we say that it's, after you talk about the general being alive, each part of the body has its individual, tailor-made vitality that suits it according to its particular qualities of that particular limb. That's why that's got to do with Chabad, because what's Chabad? Chabad is intellect. When we talk about seichel, how do you understand something intellectually? Is by getting all the details. You have to get all the parameters, all the dimensions, all the details, and then you get the concept, and you're able to relate to it and understand it. And once you understand something, then that now starts to influence you in an individual way, in an internal way, and guide each part of you in the particular way it needs to be guided. That's the Alter Rebbe, Chayes Prati. Now you would say, Tess, if you want to talk about which is a higher level of vitality, the individual Chayes is a lower level of a thing. The most important thing is life. Now we talk about the individual limbs and the individual subsidy, so to speak, not subsidy, the individual gift, the individual chayes to each limb, that seems to be lower. Because first of all, the individual chayes is limited. It comes measured according to the needs of each limb. Number two, the bitul of each limb to the chayes that is provided to it is not such a deep bittul, because remember, the limb maintains its individuality, so it's not so buttal to the chayes. You would say that the general concept of life is much more powerful, and everything becomes, so to speak, subservient to it, buttal to it. When you talk about the difference between life, like chas v'shalom, if somebody's struggling for his life, he's not thinking about his little toe or his arm. It's all about life. What's uppermost is life and the gift of life. And then there's the details. But so the life, the chayes klali is more powerful. However, there's a mila, says the Rebbe, and the chayes prati, the individual chayes on top of the chayes klali, more than the chayes klali, to the extent that through the chayes prati there's a new reality, there's a new thing that becomes achieved. Why? Because the fact itself that the chayes klali, the general chayes, is not connected with the individual aspect of every limb, is a sign as in im driktzach nitaiz the shleimus chayes mamish, that in this chayus, the general chayes, is not being fully expressed the ultimate, the most wholesome aspect of chayus, and that's why it doesn't express itself in the individual chayes of each limb. Dafka, when we talk about the chayes prati, because it's able to relate to and enliven each individual aver, each individual limb, and each individual koyach hanefesh according to its inyan, and enliven it, in a way that it becomes one with that thing. So there you have an expression that this is an even more complete and even more developed and wholesome chayas. And in other words, the fact that it can go down and get more detailed looks like it's a limitation, but actually it's because it starts from higher. It's a more full expression of chayas. And similarly, this is, I would love to see this, to hear this explained by the great Hasidic transmitters into even more, exact oisius. So similarly, when we talk about Teresis Chabad, Davka, through the fact that Alter Rebbe drew down this inyan of chayus into the details, chayus of Chassidus into the details, keiches and nefesh according to their content, so he was mamshich even more fully and more wholesomely the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. And that's why also the details of the keiches become enveloped and vested and permeated with the chayus of Chassidus. In other words, if I may try and understand it in my language, the Torah of the Alter Rebbe didn't give one aspect, which is Chabad. That aspect of Chabad, which is detailed in Chayes Protis, is creating a more wholesome expression of what the Baal Shem Tov was teaching. Yud. And this is also the kesher between Chayel and Parshas Tavo. The Chayes Klali of Teres Chassidus HaKlali is the general Chayes of the general Chassidus is expressed in the general, the word Tove, come in, which means coming in and totally being involved and engaged in the Aved of Torah mitzvahs. But that comes from the Nekudas HaChayes, the innermost aspect of Chayes that Torah Chassidus gives into doing Torah mitzvahs. Because it reveals the real emes of the Yid, and the real emes of the Yid is one with Torah mitzvahs. That's in a general way. Then, when we talk about bringing the Chayes Klali, this Chayes into the individual Keiches, that's already the next stage. You take the Tovei and V'yirishta v'yashavta, inherit and settle therein. You bring down this general Chayes of Chassidus into a siyashus, into a settled way, into a permanent way in the individual Keiches HaNefesh. And that's through Chassidus Chabad. So Chassidus Chabad is the whole Torah Baal Shem Tov through the prism and bringing down in a more wholesome way of Teresis Chabad through the Pratim, through the Seichel, through the individual Keiches. Good Yom Tov.